when people ask me to introduce myself, I don't talk about the accolades or things that I've done. I like to talk about my manifesto. And it's a personal manifesto, and I believe that every single one of us should have a personal manifesto or something that kind of like drives us to do change work or to do development. So this is my personal manifesto. And as you can see in that picture, it was taken in 2015 while I was serving my country through the National Youth Service. And I was teaching kids, how to use play to like teach life skills basically. And I came up with this quote. I want to help other people cross and help young people in underserved communities to change the circumstances they've inherited. I do not know when I'll achieve my ideal world, but I will die trying, making the lives of other people better. And I know somebody else will carry on the course. I may be able to inspire a million or not, but what I'll be proud of is that I have made one person smile. I have watched them grow to change their circumstances, and they can transform themselves and their family. And they can have the courage to also help another person cross and change their circumstances. So when people ask me, Ahmed, introduce yourself, I don't say that I'm a TEDx speaker or social entrepreneur or I've built a number of initiatives. I talk about my manifesto because this is who I am and this is what I represent. And this is also me. Yeah, I'm also doing the same thing now.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
In 2004, Barack Obama gave a speech that made him the president, and he made a quote. He said, "My story is part of the larger American story, and I owe a debt to all of those that came before me that in no other country on earth is my story even possible." My story is part of the larger African story, and I owe a debt to all of those that came before me, that in no other continent on earth is my story even possible. About 17 million minutes ago, I was born and raised in the largest floating slum in Africa, Makoko, Nigeria. I lost my mom when I was 7, and my dad became unemployed at the same time. I stayed out of school for our academic term, and my brother stayed out of school for our academic year. These were my circumstances growing up in the slum until I went to a seminar when I was 14 for vulnerable children. This seminar introduced me to self-esteem and leadership, and I learned something. In that seminar, I was told that self-esteem is the way you see yourself and the way you see the world, and the way you handle yourself and the way you handle the world. And I thought, I can't change my circumstances. I can do something about my world. And I went into my community. I was very inspired, driven. I went into my community, and I decided to engage over 3,000 young people. And from engaging over 3,000 young people, I noticed only 1 in 10 young people who share similar circumstances such as mine would have access to 21st century skills needed to integrate into the workforce and prepare for the future of work. And that defined my work and my journey and what I do. And I decided to start a project called Skill to Rural Bootcamp, where young people in rural communities can identify problems within their communities and co-create solutions to them using design thinking. And as they co-create solutions, they actually develop 21st century skills along the line, such as critical thinking, creativity, and emotional intelligence. And why did I start this project? It was because I thought, what if my mom actually had access to a solution that would have prevented her from dying? Or what if my dad could have had access to an employment opportunity? The people who would change the rural community slum are the children who live in it. And that was my idea of change. And that was my idea of development. That actually change will not come from the outside world or from somewhere. Change would come from the community. And, we work in very deep rural communities, really hard to reach communities in Nigeria. And I also noticed that during that moment, facilitators were actually struggling to come into these communities. We invite speakers to come and share with these kids as well. They were also struggling to get into this community. And I decided to, create a blended learning curriculum where these facilitators could actually record a video, and then we play the video to the kids as well. And then they can get inspired. And they also have access to mentors who help them in the design process and also become an important role model in their life. And then we connect them to opportunities, right? After coming up with this solution, we actually connect them to opportunities to pitch their idea. There was one of the solutions that were created from the bootcamp actually went ahead to pitch in a national competition, and they got a seed funding. For the first time they flew. They don't know what the plane is, live in very far-reach community, and they had experience. They could see the world far away from their eyes. And why am I sharing my story, and why am I sharing my work? Is that storytelling is important in innovation. My story is part of my work, and my story is part of my identity. The reason why you will connect with a brand is because of the story. And the reason why you're connecting with me probably now, maybe you're thinking, is because of the story that I told you about my work. Because I'm close to the problem. So whenever you're creating something, you're thinking about innovation. Innovation is not just about creating all of this wonderful solution. Innovation is how you're able to also communicate that story or the idea behind the innovation. When Apple was created, there was a slogan called Think Differently, right? It was a story. Nike would tell you, just do it. There was a story behind it. Adidas would say, impossible is nothing. There's a story behind all of those brands. So for it to drive innovation and for it to drive change and for people to support our work, we need to tell stories. Even if we go into communities to collect data, what's the story behind the community? We are an embodiment of stories. We live stories every day, every single moment. What we are doing now currently is a story. Every second, every minute, every year, every day, we live stories. When people say, Ahmed, I don't have a story to tell, I'm like, actually, it's because you're not present, that's why you're not telling the stories. Because it's only people who are present that are able to tell stories. So we've all gotten stories. So when you think about development, when you think about engaging your community, think about being present in their lives and how you're able to tell their stories, or how you're able to share in their stories. Because again, you can own a story in another person's story. You can own a mission in another person's mission. You can own a vision in another person's vision. You don't have to be an Ahmed to own a story, or you don't have to be a founder who have created something to own a story. And that is the idea. I want to change our idea and our perspective about what storytelling is. So you had a version of my story, right? One single version. But then I created an edtech platform recently that will be launching soon. And I told my story differently again, in a different light and in a different way. I might be wondering, how did I switch my story again to actually pitch an edtech platform? So I actually pitched this in the London Business School recently. And I also pitched this at the Western Union Foundation as well. And also recently pitched it at the Western Union office and got a grant of $5,000 to build this. And when I was telling this story, it was the same story that I just told you now, but in a different light. Again, listen. I was born and raised in the largest floating slum in Africa, Makoko, Nigeria. I lost my mom when I was 7, and my dad became unemployed at the same time. I also stayed out of school for academic term, and this was the same circumstances for my brother, who stayed out of school for academic year. Until when I turned 13, my dad sent me to a computer school, where I learned about computer appreciation, and I had access to the internet for the first time. Having access to a PC and the internet, I was able to see the world far away from my eyes, and I was able to get opportunities that changed my circumstances. Currently in Africa, there are about 90 million underserved young people who don't have access to the technology or who don't have access to the skills to change their circumstances. What if they can learn from somebody who looks like them through their digital device? And this is why I created the Skittle Tech platform. Same story, different outcome. So storytelling changed the world, basically. And it's how you can actually find that story in the larger story, basically. So when you think about innovation, don't just think about how people register for the course and say, this is the function of this course, or this is what this course does. I don't talk about a lot of functionality. I tell my story, and that's why somebody will say, I want to give you this money. Because storytelling actually appeals to the part of our brain that deals with emotion, not logic. And that's why people want to support you. And then we'll go into the nitty-gritty of storytelling, right? And how it's important for creation, and how it's important for innovation. And when you want to create, or when you have an idea, I don't know how many of us want to become an entrepreneur, but I feel like we're all entrepreneurs, to be honest. Because in your role, in whatever you do, you either create something or come up with a project or you do something, right? In fact, if you want to go into an interview, you have to sell yourself in an interview, basically, and you need to tell stories. All my interviews, I tell stories. Every single of my interviews, every single of my presentation, I go there with stories. I remember applying for a head of program in the London School of Economics, and when they asked me to present, so I designed a full-blown accelerator. I was sharing stories in the beginning to start with, because that's what people connect with. And when you're thinking of creation, yeah, money is important. You need people, you need time, and you also need a platform. But there is something that is important in creating, or in building, and that is storytelling. It's a story that will make somebody say that, I want to work with you. I feel connected. It's a story that inspires other people to take action. It's a story that would say that I feel I would die for this person. Currently in my work or in my project, I have over 100 volunteers who kind of support me in that work. And whenever I ask them, why did you volunteer, or why did you join? Why do you want to be part of this cause? They said, because of the story. I feel connected to your story, and I can see my story in your story. And that's why we've gotten people who have gotten lived experience as well. More so, when you see people donate to the cause as well, or donate to our work, and ask, why did you donate? They also tell you is that because of the stories that we can connect to, that's why we've donated, basically. So storytelling is really important. Why would you create something and you're not able to tell the story? I might want to sell a product to you and say, this is what this phone does. But when I come to you and tell you a story, you want to buy from me. And there's something, I don't know, how many of you have heard about the golden splits? Have you seen the golden splits? Yeah, or the golden circle, rather, and the splits. So Simon Sinek actually came up with this, golden circle. And since I've heard about it, I've been using it in my talk, and I've also been using it in my work. And, when you look at storytelling, or when you look at change, and when you look at innovation, it's inside out, right? It starts with why. And most of the time when I go through LinkedIn, or I go to Facebook, or I go through people's posts, I see many people talk about what they do. But they never spoke about why they do what they do. And the reason why somebody would connect with you, or connect with your product, or connect with whatever you've created, is because of why you do them. You talk about how amazing the product is, but you never talk about why you actually created that product. So I see people even get an opportunity and they go to LinkedIn, I am pleased to announce that I've gotten this, which is good and great, right? And then some people might even rave likes, 10,000, but nothing comes out of it. Because they only talked about what they've gotten. They didn't speak about why. And it's your why that makes somebody say that, I feel connected, and come into your DMs to say that I want to hear more. I want to connect with you. Let's go have a call. So leadership is inside out. Storytelling is inside out. You have to start with why. Why you do what you do, how you do what you do, and the what, basically. So for me, I used to lead with why every time. If I don't know why I'm creating something, I'm not even going to create it to start with. What's the why? Why am I creating an edtech platform, for example? Why did I start Skill to Rap Bootcamp or my nonprofit, for example? Because of my story. So our why is our story. And you might think, okay, I don't think I do have a story. But when you engage with people you're creating for, that's where you find the story. The reason why somebody says, I don't have a story, is because they don't do. If you do and engage, you always have a story to tell. So when you think about story, don't think about what you do. Don't think about how you do it. Think about why you actually do it. And it's the reason why somebody will want to be part of your movement, why somebody will want to be part of your work. Because you don't just only want to build a product, you want to build a movement. When Apple started, it was like, you want to compete against the big brothers. That was it. We want to create something that would compete against like the big phones and the big, screens and all of those things. And then you want to give the power to the people so that when they have this device, they can use it to change their life and their world, basically, and do whatever they like with it. There's a story around that. So when you're thinking of your product, think about that story behind it and think about building a movement rather than building a product. And it's the reason why somebody will say, I would die for this movement. Some people even put the logo on their badge and everything. When I talk about storytelling, I use Marshall Gaz a lot. And it says something. It said, a good public story is drawn from the series of choice points that have structured the plot of your life. The challenges you faced, the choices you made, and the outcomes you experienced. So when you think about structuring your story, whether your own personal story or the story of your work or the story of your product, or the story of your life in UEA, think about it in a way that, what is the challenge that you kind of like faced, basically? Why did you feel it was a challenge? What was so challenging about it, and why was it a challenge? For example, when you listen to my story, it was because I grew up in Makoko, I didn't have access to the resources, lost my mom, I didn't have that support system, I needed to create something, right? That was a challenge, right? So think about the challenge. And some people will be like, okay, well, I don't have a sad story. A story doesn't have to be sad for you to tell it. There's also good in good stories, right? And you also don't have to have everything to tell a story as well. For example, think about your family. Maybe you even have more than enough. And then because you have more than enough, you're deprived to learn some certain things. That's also a story. Or maybe you're amongst maybe 3 boys, you're the girl child, and, you face some challenges, with that as well. You have to battle and contend with that. That's also a story. That's a challenge. So, and what were the choices you made because of those challenges, basically? For me, was creating something, was starting a project, was creating an edtech platform, basically. And, why did you make that choice you did? Where did you get the courage or not? And where did you get the hope or not? And how did it feel? So for me, the choice were like, I got that choice from the seminar I attended when I was 14. The fact that I heard that, I could do something about my world. I could access mentors. People who said, there were even people who told my dad after that program, because my dad, at the end of the program, we were leaving, and one of the tutors said to my dad, he said, your boy is a talent. And I heard that person saying it to my dad. And I'm like, okay, I think I can do something, And there was that feeling that I could create something, that I could be something. And the outcome, how did the outcome feel? Why did it feel that way? What did it teach you? What do you want to teach us, and how do you want us to feel? So I can tell you multiple stories that have emerged from the bootcamp that I've created. I can tell you multiple stories of somebody who have maybe used the product, and then because of that, they've been able to change their circumstances as well, and that's the outcome. And I can tell you how that story, the fact that I decided to do something about my life, how I've gotten an opportunity to like give a TEDx talk, or how I've gotten an opportunity to even write 3 books, or how I've gotten an opportunity to get a scholarship such as the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship, or how I've gotten an opportunity to, talk at the National Assembly in Nigeria, or how I've been able to speak at UNESCO in Paris, or how I've been able to like do all of those multiple things that were based on the outcomes as well. So when you think about story, you can actually use this CCO model basically to actually narrate your story and tell your story. It could be personal, it could be a story of a product as well. Again, this is a quote that I like to share as well from Marshall Gans, and he said, "You may think that your story doesn't matter, that people aren't interested, that you shouldn't be talking about yourself. But when you do public work, you have a responsibility to offer a public account of who you are, why you do what you do, and where you hope to lead. The thing about it is that if you don't author your public story, others will. And they may not tell it in the way that you like, as many recent examples have shown. Nobody can tell your story better than you do. Honestly, storytelling changed my life. Because actually, literally, 7 years ago, nobody knew about me. Nobody even knew I grew up in Makoko. Nobody knew that I could create things. Nobody knew about all my projects. Nobody knew about all the voluntary work that I've done, right? It's when I started telling my story that I started getting people reaching out to me. So if you do good work, tell the story. And you never can tell who is inspired by those stories as well. I never can tell the opportunity that it brings to you. I understand that it can be challenging putting ourselves out there, but for me, it has done me more good than harm, basically. Because if telling my story will bring me good tidings and others good tidings, then I'll keep telling my story. Because nobody even cared about me in the first place, to be honest. Like, grew up in Makoko, nobody even knew I was in Makoko to start with. Nobody knew I was raised there. Nobody knew that that was my life. Like, nobody cares. But because I was able to own that story, own my journey, and tell it, is the reason why people want to invite me to share and to talk about my work. Or is the reason why I'll go into an interview for a scholarship opportunity and say, this is my journey and this is my story. And they're like, okay, we want you on board. Because I understand that when I tell that story, I can use it to change the circumstances of so many people as well. That my circumstances is tied towards other many people's circumstances as well. That my circumstances is tied towards my family as well. Because I also owe it to my family who have given me that opportunity. So for me, I have to tell my story. You know, people had BBC featuring them, people had all of those people featuring them. I had nothing. I only had storytelling and social media. And that was the way I could tell the world that this is who I am, and this is what I can do. And all of a sudden, I created my own opportunity. Also, this is also like another style when you think about storytelling, when you think about creation. You look at, what's your story of self? What's the story of us? That is shared story. And what's the story of now? So when you think about story of self, it's like why you were called to what you have been called to. Why? Again, we're coming back to the why, of the story. The story of us. So you're thinking of like, what's that community story? What's that your story in other people's story? That multiple shared story. Because whenever I'm telling my story, I'm not only talking about that I lost my mom, I'm also talking about the young people that I work with who either lost their parents as well and live in underserved community as well. I'm talking about someone who probably could not even afford, 3 square meal, but then had access to education and decided to do something. So what's your constituency, community, and, organization story? For example, my chief programs officer could not afford to write her final school exam when she was like going through high school. She could not afford to pay for her final school exam. And somebody helped her. And that's the connection, that's the story. And that's why she joined the organization. So that's a connected, shared story. So people will connect with you based on that story. And then you start sharing lived experiences together, right? And I think we need to also talk about this in development as well. I mean, we're talking about storytelling, we're talking about innovation. Lived experience is an expertise on its own. But people often deny that. And then you see development organizations actually don't want to pay people for their lived experience. When they ask you to come and share your story, people don't want to pay you for that. But lived experience is an expertise. It's not easy to go through that journey and to have that experience, to be able to come up with something or to be able to create something. So we need to start paying people for their lived experience as well. And I think it's something that, we need to probably reflect on as we also think about stories as well. And story of now. The story of now is the challenge this community now face, the choices it must make, and the hopes to which we can aspire. So which world do I want to create? Which world do I aspire to? Is to liberate every young person in an underserved community where they can say that, this is who I am, this is what I can do, this is what I can create. Is to also and as they transform themselves and they transform their community as well. And that is also reflected in a reflection that I used to have and in the quote that, and my idea of giving as well, that it is good to give. But when you give people with the intention that you want them to remain the same so that you can continue to give them, then you're not giving. When you give with the intention that you want people to remain the same so that you can continue to give them, then you're not giving. We give with the intention that the people we are giving can become givers themselves, transform their community, transform their family, transform their society as well. That's my idea of giving. That's the word I aspire to. That's the story that I'm telling. That I'm not just, supporting these young people, I'm also creating givers who will end up impacting their community and impacting their society. And to be honest, I don't know when I will achieve the ideal world, but I will die trying, doing this work. And, also, when you think about storytelling, I also think about innovation, you want to tell the stories of your products. There's also the 3-act structure. I don't know if you have done, I'm talking to some media students here, so they might probably have known this already. So it's called the 3-act structure. When you look at movies and you look at all of those movies, you see how, there's the setup, right? Where people are there's that setup and even if you look at my journey, the setup was actually being born to start with in Makoko. My life, my starting point, that's the setup. And there's a confrontation that happened during that moment. It was losing my mom, my dad becoming unemployed, me having to finish through secondary school, get into university, scaling through that. There were so many confrontations during that moment, right? And there was crisis as well in between, but there was a resolution. There was an happy ending to that, right? And the happy ending was that I was able to create a project, a non-profit, an innovation, even though nobody believed in that. I was able to create that. And, I was able to support, for example, we've supported over 8,000 young people in Africa. And, we've raised hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And with 100 volunteers, if, for example, those 100 volunteers, if you're paying them $10 each, they've contributed about 130,000 plus hours of volunteering. If I pay them $10 each for those 130,000 hours, it means that they've saved the organization $1.3 million, right? So again, these are the resolution. And the fact that I can come speak to you here from Makoko, or I can, speak at UNESCO headquarters in Paris, with top ministers across the world. Those are the resolution. Those were the, the changes that has happened. And I could even work and live in London as well, right? So, so those are different resolutions that has happened, in that process as well. So when you think about the 3-act structure as well, it's also a way to like, tell the story, like, and there's always a point where, and it's told over time, right? There's something I used to say that time is your greatest ally. The only way you can weigh a merit of something is over time. And, and stories is also said across time. We are like stories across time. We are an embodiment of stories. It's across time. If you create a product today or an innovation today, you can't start telling the story immediately. You also like, the way you can weigh that story is over time as well. As you tell the story of the innovation, as you talk about it, why, it continues to like improve and improve and improve. And you can tell like, that's why they say you have a product life cycle, right? How do you tell the story of the product life cycle as well in between? And again, storytelling process start with story awareness. Like, what's the awareness of the story? Once you're aware of the story, you construct the story, and then you tell the story. And, again, if you're building a product, for example, or you're creating something, or you want to like come up with an idea, or whatever you're doing, obviously, one way or the other, you would probably want to organize an event. You're looking for partnerships, you're like building a product, or you're applying for grants. Every single of this process involves storytelling. Every single component. Like, there's nothing that I'm applying to, I don't shy away from my story. And if you, because of my story, you don't accept me, it's fine. It means that we don't align today, but maybe we might align tomorrow, I don't know. But one of the things that I've said is that I'll never shy away from my story. I'll never shy away of the why or the core of my product. And if somebody doesn't like it, it's not about me, it's about them. So I'll keep telling the story. And yeah, let's look at case studies. We look at several stories that people have said and people have told. And I picked the stories from social media, and I also started with a story that I shared. And so there's a young man that I met in 2018 in a boot camp. So this is a story that I shared on social media. So I met this young man in 2018 at a boot camp. He was interested in technology, and I think it was in 2021 he got into Blackshire University to study AI and artificial intelligence and technology. Does not have the money to pay for his flight. He got a scholarship, but the scholarship wasn't covering his flight to get to where he was going to. And I was like, okay. And he reached out to me and said, Ahmed, could you donate like at least $100 to my, to support me, reaching out to everybody. And I'm like, he might not get the money, and I was like, what can I do? So I decided to say that I don't have $100 to give you, but I could tell your story and I could share the story to raise money. So, and I came up with this story, basically. And you will see the level of urgency, because storytelling is also urgency as well. The urgency in the story. So, and I thought about the story creatively, and you could see like challenges and all of those things as well in between. So I said 10,080 minutes. So what I did was to convert the number of days that was left for him to resume to minutes, because that signifies kind of like urgency. And I said 10,080 minutes, that's the time left for Ali Ajagbe to start his BTech program at Blackshire University in India. He got a fully scholarship for his tuition and accommodation, living expenses covered. However, he is to cover his travel expenses and flight costs. Ali currently needs $2,000 to cover his flight costs. He has so far raised $500 out of that amount by working for some firms and from family and friends, but is currently out of options and needs our support. I first met Ali at the 2018 Steer from Greatness Bootcamp, where he demonstrated strong leadership potential. I could recall how he mentioned that he was passionate about raising tech leaders in young people. As a student fresh from secondary school, Ali created Design IT to teach basic computer appreciation and web design to secondary school students in underserved communities. He also further called himself 2047 president, meaning by the year 2047, he will become the president of Nigeria. Ali worked hard to achieve his dream. He applied and secured a scholarship to the A-Levels program with the Education Advancement Center, where he was the best student and scored 15 over 16 points. He also got into the African Leadership Academy, which has an acceptance rate of 5% to complete a pre-university program for young and talented African leaders. Today, Ali needs our help and support to achieve his educational and life goals, and he has just 10,080 minutes. I so much believe in Ali's dream, and I believe you will accept my invitation to make his dream come true. Click the GoFundMe to donate and get Ali his flight tickets. So, and in 72 hours, we raised £1,500 to get Ali's tickets. Next. And that's the power of story. That's the power of story. That's the power of story. Storytelling is an invitation. It's an invitation to contribute to something bigger and to something larger than yourself. You know, and it's so interesting that many people see social media as a bad platform, but actually it's also a platform for social good and social change. And this is also another story. I hope I still have time, please. This is also another story that I'll be sharing. It's a story of two young girls who actually came to me, and one of them wanted to study in the College of Health. They didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources, and they reached out to me. They came through the boot camp as well, that I used to organize, and some of them are there. So again, so I told the story again, again, shared story, right? In 2018, I led the Skills Boot Camp, a 2-day intensive boot camp where children in rural communities develop solutions to problems they are facing in their communities and develop 21st century skills. Through the boot camp, the children did not just create amazing solutions, but believe that they can change the circumstances they've inherited. Mercy and Miriam are two of the numerous participants who believe that they can be more and dream more. Last year, August, I reconnected with Mercy and asked about her studies. She explained how she could not afford £60 to pay for her senior secondary school certificate examination and how that has disrupted her education. Similarly, Miriam, who is passionate about the health sector, shared how her parents' lack of financial capability denies her of her further studies. Miriam has been currently admitted to the Federal College of Orthopedic to study prosthetics and orthotics technology, and £290 is denying her the opportunity. The truth is, we need to support girls like Mercy and Miriam. When we provide them with the necessary education, we offer them a chance to aspire for a better future. Don't we all imagine a world where children of both the poor and rich can aspire to become what they want to become? If you believe in that world, and if you believe in the dreams of Mercy and Miriam, I invite you to invest in their future and journey. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Again, this is a story that I told of these two girls, and I raised the money as well. And then Mercy wrote her exam. Miriam, I saw her 2022 when she was doing her final thesis, and she has completed through a diploma at the College of Health, and now she's doing a higher national diploma as well. And she's like amazing young woman now, like really amazing young woman doing like incredible stuff. And I think the power of stories can change the life of so many people and so many young people. And we need to just learn the act. Storytelling is an invitation, right? And you can see the story of now. Don't we all imagine a world, right? It's the now story. This is also another story, but I think I don't have much time, so I would skip. I think you should keep going. I'll skip this as well. I think I'll have to tell this one. Yeah, I have to tell this one. I don't know if you've heard about this person. There's a young man from Nigeria, Tunde Onakoya. He's my friend. And, he's just broken the Guinness World Record for playing chess in New York for 60 hours. And he's also doing that to raise money for young people to access education as well. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is that his story shows the intersection between talent, innovation, and storytelling. That actually there could be a connection between your talent, and story, and also like innovation as well. So this is one of the stories that he told, and I think it's an interesting story. You can find it on social media. And this is how he wrote the story. So, dear dreamer, recently a video of me playing chess against 10 people simultaneously in Germany has been making rounds on the internet. This has brought a lot of attention to me as I have gained over 200K followers across social media. From that one video, it has been a little overwhelming for me, but I think it presents a rare opportunity to share a profound lesson. 8 years ago, I quit playing chess professionally. I was a talented kid who had won a number of tournaments and had great dreams and aspirations to become a grandmaster. I gave up along the line, partly because there was no way to finance this pursuit of personal glory, and more importantly, because I had found a deeper calling to use my love and knowledge of chess as a tool to empower children in poverty. I was 21 years old at the time, so it seemed like such an unwise decision, but I took the road less traveled, regardless, and it has indeed made all the difference. This bettered the Chess in Slums project that has given thousands of children in society, often overlooked, a fighting chance. So I say this to the young, the old, and the extraordinary talented person reading this. Each of you owes a unique talent or skill that sets you apart. When you use this talent solely for your ambition, it brings you success, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, when you choose to share these gifts with others, especially those who may never have the same opportunities, it's transformed into something far more powerful. It becomes purpose. I urge you today to look beyond personal success and envision how your talents, whether in art, science, music, eloquence, writing, teaching, tech, sports, etc., can contribute to the greater good and give more people a sense of belonging. While it may seem extraordinary that one man can play chess against 10 people at the same time, it does pale in comparison to the most significant moves I have ever made, which is dedicating my life and ideas to the service of others. I don't ever want to be remembered as the man who could beat 10 people at chess, but rather as the man who helped children believe they could do great things from small places. The true essence of our talent and gift is realized not when we bask in the applause on stage, but when we use our stage to give a voice to those who cannot speak for themselves. So, dreamer, know thyself, explore your talents, own it, nurture it, and when the time is right, share it as a gift to the world. This is how our civilization has advanced, because men and women of great talent, knowledge, and skill had the courage and ability to share their gifts with others. Not one of us can feel his duty done unless he can say that because he lived, something or someone upon earth has been made just a little better. Keep going, dreamer. I hope you never stop giving the world something new to believe. Follow and support our work at Gifts of Chess and Chess in Slum Africa. And this was the same idea why he went to New York to play chess to break the World Guinness World Record for 60 hours. That's the idea. The idea that by using our talents, we can use it to change our world. The plan was to raise $1 million, and he's still raising that money. And that's how you use your talent, and storytelling, to create something and to go to areas that are uncharted. Because there are so many people who can play chess, but they didn't use it to inspire the world. And I want you to think about how you can use your talents and look at it, broke that record. Think about how you can use your talents. Think about how you can use your story to inspire innovation and change. I would like to end that my story is part of the larger African story. And I owe a debt to all of those that came before me, that in no other continent on earth is my story even possible. Thank you.